I spent 20 years making dead things look alive. Then I discovered my wife specialized in making living people disappear. Now it was my turn to vanish, permanently. My name is Owen Blake. I'm 41 years old, and I've been running my emergency locksmith service in suburban Cleveland for 12 years. When people's pipes burst at 2 a.m. or they're locked out in a snowstorm, they call me. I built my reputation on being reliable, showing up when others won't. Ironic how I became an expert at fixing everyone else's disasters while my own marriage was falling apart. The night everything started unraveling began like any other. I was fixing a flooded basement on Maple Street when my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up." Standard message. Nothing unusual. Except this was the fourth time that week, and it was only Wednesday. By the time I finished and drove home, it was past midnight. The house sat dark except for the porch light. I parked my work van, noting her car wasn't there yet. The familiar knot in my stomach tightened as I let myself in. The living room felt different somehow. Not messy, but rearranged. A throw pillow missing from the couch. Her favorite coffee mug absent from the side table. Small details most people wouldn't notice. But when you spend your days observing broken locks and tampered security systems, you develop an eye for things that don't belong. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom. The house seemed to echo differently when Vanessa wasn't home, like it was holding its breath. In the bedroom, I noticed her jewelry box was closed tight, something she rarely bothered with unless she was hiding something. That's when I heard her car in the driveway. I quickly changed into pajamas and slipped under the covers, pretending to sleep. The front door opened and closed with practiced quiet. Her heels clicked across the hardwood floor, but the sound was wrong. Too deliberate, too careful. Vanessa appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the hallway light. She stood there for a long moment, studying my supposedly sleeping form. Then she whispered something that made my blood run cold. "Tomorrow changes everything, Owen. I'm sorry it has to be this way." She thought I was asleep. She had no idea I'd heard every word. The next morning, Vanessa was gone before I woke up, leaving only a note on the kitchen counter. "Gone to visit Mom for a few days. We'll talk when I get back." But something about the way she'd packed, taking more clothes than a short trip required, leaving behind items she never traveled without, told me this wasn't a simple family visit. That's when I decided to find out exactly what my wife had been doing during all those late nights. 3 days passed without word from Vanessa. No calls, no texts, nothing. Her mother lived in Phoenix, and I called her twice. The first time, Mrs. Rodriguez said Vanessa hadn't arrived yet, but was expected. The second time, she sounded confused. "Owen, I thought Vanessa was with you. She called yesterday, saying she couldn't make it because of work." "Work? Right." I was sitting in my van outside a client's house, staring at my phone, when it buzzed with a Facebook message. The sender had no profile picture, just a generic silhouette. The name was John Kowalski, but something about it felt fake. "You deserve to know the truth about your wife. Marriott downtown, room 412. Tonight, 9 p.m. Bring a camera." My hand started shaking. Every instinct told me to delete it, block the account, pretend I'd never seen it. But that hollow ache in my gut, the one that had been growing for months, wouldn't let me ignore it. I finished my service calls early and drove home. The house felt like a tomb without Vanessa's presence. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the message until the words blurred together. Part of me hoped this was some sick joke, a scam, anything but what I suspected it was. At 8:30, I grabbed my phone and drove downtown. The Marriott sat on Euclid Avenue, all glass and steel, the kind of place where business travelers stayed. The kind of place where married people met when they didn't want to be seen. I parked across the street and waited. At exactly 9 o'clock, I walked through the lobby like I belonged there. The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt endless. Room 412 was at the end of the hallway, and I could hear voices inside. Laughter. Her laughter. Through the gap in the curtains, I saw them. Vanessa was sitting on the bed, wearing the red dress she'd bought for our last anniversary. The dress she claimed didn't fit anymore. A man with dark hair was pouring wine into 2 glasses. He looked younger than me, maybe 35, with the kind of build that came from actual gym time, not manual labor. They were talking, touching, acting like lovers who'd known each other for years. The way she looked at him made my chest tight. It was the same way she used to look at me, back when we were dating, back when I thought I was enough. I didn't take pictures. I didn't knock on the door or make a scene. I just watched for maybe 10 minutes, memorizing details I wish I could forget. The way she threw her head back when she laughed. How comfortable they seemed together. How she'd removed her wedding ring and placed it on the nightstand. When I got home, I sat in my truck in the driveway for an hour. The house looked different now, like a place where strangers lived. Inside, I walked through rooms that suddenly felt too big, too empty, too full of memories that had turned poison. I opened my laptop and created a new email account. Then I sent myself the hotel's address, the room number, the time, evidence of where I'd been, what I'd seen, insurance for whatever came next. Because one thing was certain, the marriage I thought I had was already over. Vanessa just hadn't told me yet. Vanessa came back on a Thursday evening, pulling into our driveway like nothing had changed. I watched from the kitchen window as she sat in her car for 5 minutes, checking her phone, fixing her hair in the rearview mirror. When she finally walked to the front door, she didn't use her key. She knocked. I opened the door and studied her face. She looked different somehow. Guilty, but trying to hide it behind a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, honey," Vanessa said, stepping inside. "Miss me? How was your mother?" I asked, closing the door behind her. "Oh, you know how she is. Always complaining about something." She dropped her purse on the side table and headed toward the stairs. "I need a shower. We can catch up after." But I'd already caught up. While she was gone, I'd done some digging. Called her credit card company, claiming to verify some charges. The Marriott downtown. Dinner at an expensive restaurant I couldn't afford. Charges from a lingerie store she'd never mentioned. "Vanessa," I called as she reached the stairs. She turned, hand on the banister. "Yeah. We need to talk. Now." Her jaw tightened slightly. "Can't it wait? I'm tired from the drive." "No, it can't." We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, like strangers negotiating a business deal. I placed a printed credit card statement between us. "Want to explain these charges?" I asked. Vanessa glanced at the paper, then back at me. "I treated myself while I was visiting Mom. Is that a crime?" "The Marriott downtown is in Phoenix. We went there for drinks. Mom wanted to see the lobby renovation." Every answer came too quickly, too smooth. She'd rehearsed this conversation. "Vanessa," I said quietly, "I saw you at the hotel. Room 412. With him." The color drained from her face. For a moment, the mask slipped completely. "You followed me," she whispered. "Someone told me where to look." She stood up abruptly, chair screeching against the floor. "This is insane, Owen. You're acting crazy. Sit down." Something in my voice made her freeze. The same tone I used with clients who try to skip payment. She sat. "We'll talk when I get back from my trip," she said finally. "I need time to think." "What trip?" "I'm going back to Phoenix. When I come back, we'll figure this out." I nodded slowly. "Take all the time you need." That night, as Vanessa packed, I made a list. Bank accounts to close. Utilities to transfer. Locks to change. Vanessa left the next morning without saying goodbye. I watched from the workshop window as she loaded her car with more luggage than any week-long trip required. She was moving out, just calling it something else. I waited an hour after she left, then got to work. First stop, our bank. I walked into the branch where we'd opened our joint account 8 years ago, carrying a folder of documents and wearing my most professional smile. "I need to close our joint checking account," I told the manager, sliding our account information across her desk. "My wife and I are restructuring our finances." "Will Mrs. Blake be signing as well?" she asked. "She's out of town on business. But as you can see, I'm authorized to make changes." I pointed to the signature card we'd both signed years ago. 20 minutes later, I walked out with a cashier's check for the full balance. $15,000 that Vanessa thought would be waiting when she returned. Next, the utilities. I called the electric company, gas company, water department. "I'm transferring service to my name only," I explained each time. "My wife will be moving out soon." By noon, every bill was in my name alone. The locksmith arrived at 2 o'clock. "Changing all the locks," I told him. "House got broken into last week. Can't be too careful." "Smart thinking," he agreed, unpacking his tools. "You'd be surprised how many people wait until after something bad happens." While he worked, I gathered every trace of Vanessa from our bedroom. Her clothes, jewelry, makeup, everything. I packed it all into boxes and loaded them into my van. The storage unit I rented was across town, paid for in cash, 6 months in advance. When the locksmith finished, I walked through the house with new eyes. It felt different already, cleaner, like a weight had been lifted from the walls themselves. That evening, I called Vanessa's brother Marcus. We'd never been close, but he deserved to know what was coming. Marcus, it's Owen. I need you to know that Vanessa and I are getting divorced. Silence on the other end. She's having an affair. I continued. Has been for months. When she comes back from wherever she really is, she's going to spin this like I'm the bad guy. I wanted you to hear the truth first. Jesus, Owen. I'm sorry, man. I had no idea. Neither did I, until recently. Just when she calls you crying about how I've lost my mind, remember this conversation. After I hung up, I sat in my workshop and opened the leather journal where I'd been documenting everything. Dates, times, credit card charges, hotel receipts. Enough evidence to bury her in court if it came to that. But I wasn't planning on court. I was planning something much more elegant. Vanessa wanted time to think. I'd give her all the time in the world. And when she was ready to talk, she'd find out there was nobody left to listen. 3 days after Vanessa left for her second Phoenix trip, I got a call that changed everything. The number was local, but I didn't recognize it. Is this Owen Blake? The voice was elderly, female, with a slight accent I couldn't place. Yes, who's this? My name is Dorothy Martinez. I think we need to talk about your wife. Something in her tone made my blood run cold. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can you meet me at Denny's on Brook Park Road? 1 hour. I almost said no. Almost hung up and pretended this conversation never happened. But that hollow ache in my gut told me I needed to hear what this woman had to say. Dorothy Martinez was 70-something, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. She was sitting in a corner booth, hands wrapped around a coffee cup like it was an anchor. You're younger than the others, she said as I sat down. Others? She slid a manila folder across the table. My grandson Tommy works at the Marriott. He's been keeping track of your wife's visits. Room 412. Always the same room. Always with different men. I opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of hotel registration records going back 8 months. Vanessa Rodriguez, room 412, with a parade of different last names. Anderson, Thompson, Williams, Chun. Always checking in with a husband who was never the same person twice. She's done this before, Dorothy said quietly. My nephew Carlos was married to her 3 years ago. She cleaned out his accounts and disappeared. Took him months to track her down, and by then she was already married to someone else. My hand started shaking. Married to someone else. Vanessa Rodriguez isn't even her real name. It's Maria Santos. She's got at least 4 different identities that we know of. Social security numbers, driver's licenses, the works. I stared at the papers, trying to process what I was hearing. Why are you telling me this? Because Carlos killed himself last year. Couldn't handle what she'd done to him. How she made him feel like he was crazy for suspecting her. I promised myself I'd warn the next one if I ever got the chance. Dorothy reached across the table and touched my hand. Son, you're not married to a cheating wife. You're married to a professional con artist. And if you don't get out now, she's going to destroy you just like she destroyed Carlos. I left Denny's in a daze, the folder clutched in my hands like evidence of my own stupidity. How had I missed it? The perfect answers to questions she shouldn't have known I'd ask. The way she never left personal items lying around. How she always insisted on handling the mail, the bills, anything official. At home, I went straight to our bedroom and started searching. Really searching, not just the casual looking I'd done before. Behind her jewelry box, I found a small key taped to the back. It opened a lockbox hidden in the back of her closet. Inside were 3 passports, all with Vanessa's photo but different names. Credit cards I'd never seen. And bank statements showing accounts with balances that made our joint checking look like pocket change. The woman I'd married didn't exist. She was a character, a role played by someone whose real name I might never know. But I knew one thing for certain now. When she came back expecting to continue the game, she was going to find out that Owen Blake didn't exist anymore either. I spent that night in my workshop, surrounded by the tools of my trade, and planning the most important repair job of my life. Not fixing something broken, but dismantling something that should never have been built in the first place. The lockbox contents were spread across my workbench like evidence in a crime scene. Because that's what this was, a crime scene. I'd been robbed, not of money or possessions, but of 3 years of my life. By morning, I had a plan. I call Mike Rodriguez, a private investigator I'd done work for. Former cop, current skeptic of human nature. Exactly what I needed. Mike, I need your help. My wife isn't who she says she is. Cheating. Worse. I think she's running a long con, and I'm not her first victim. I met Mike at his office downtown and laid out everything. The hotel records Dorothy had given me, the multiple identities, the hidden accounts. Mike listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. Jesus, Owen, you're talking about marriage fraud, identity theft, financial crimes. This woman's looking at serious prison time. I don't want her in prison. I want her gone. Mike raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Vanessa Rodriguez is about to have a very bad week. And when it's over, she's going to disappear voluntarily. We spent 2 hours planning. Mike would use his contacts to freeze her fake accounts, flag her false identities with law enforcement. Nothing that would get her arrested immediately, but enough to make her life very complicated very quickly. Meanwhile, I would prepare the nuclear option. That afternoon, I drove to the bank where we'd opened our joint account. The same account I'd emptied days earlier, but that wasn't the only financial surprise I had planned. I'd like to report fraudulent activity on my account, I told the branch manager. I've discovered my wife has been using false identification documents. I showed him copies of the passports, the credit cards, everything Mike had helped me organize. The manager's face went pale. Mr. Blake, this is very serious. We'll need to contact the authorities. I understand. But first, I want to make sure she can't access any other accounts. Can you flag her social security number system-wide? Within an hour, every bank in Cleveland would be alerted to watch for Vanessa Rodriguez / Maria Santos / whoever she really was. But the real masterpiece was waiting at home. I'd spent the morning creating a file that would make Dorothy's manila folder look like child's play. Copies of everything I'd found, plus additional research Mike had helped me conduct. Hotel records from other cities. DMV records showing multiple licenses. Even a marriage certificate from Tampa showing her married to someone else while she was engaged to me. I packaged it all in a neat folder labeled, "For Vanessa," and left it on the kitchen table where she'd be sure to see it. Then I changed the lock one more time, just to be thorough. When Vanessa returned from her latest trip, she was going to find a very different world waiting for her. No access to the house, no access to our accounts, and a file full of evidence that could send her to federal prison. But I was betting she wouldn't stick around long enough for that to become an issue. Professional con artists were like cockroaches. When you turned on the lights, they scattered. Sunday night came and went without Vanessa's return. Monday morning brought a phone call that made everything crystal clear. Mr. Blake? This is Detective Sarah Chun with Cleveland PD. We need to discuss your wife. My stomach dropped. Is she hurt? No, sir, but we have some questions. Can you come to the station? An hour later, I sat across from Detective Chun in an interview room that smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. She slid a photograph across the table. Do you recognize this woman? It was Vanessa, but in the photo she was blonde, smiling next to a man I'd never seen before. The timestamp showed it was taken 6 months ago. That's my wife, but I don't know when this was taken. She's never been blonde. Detective Chun opened a thick file. Mr. Blake, your wife has been under investigation for insurance fraud. This photo was taken in Miami, where she filed a claim for a house fire that destroyed everything she owned. The man in the photo is James Peterson, who was listed as her husband on the policy. My hands went numb, but we've been married for 3 years. According to our records, Vanessa Rodriguez married James Peterson in Miami 18 months ago, which would make her marriage to you bigamous. The room started spinning. She's married to both of us. At least both of you. We're tracking down 2 other possible marriages. Mr. Blake, your wife isn't just a con artist. She's running a sophisticated insurance scam across multiple states. Fake marriages, staged accidents, fraudulent claims. We estimate she's stolen over $500,000. Detective Chun leaned forward. The reason we're talking to you is that we found evidence she's been planning to burn down your house. For the insurance money. She slid another document across the table. It was a life insurance policy on me that I'd never seen before, taken out 8 months ago. The beneficiary was listed as Vanessa Rodriguez Blake, and the payout was $200,000. She forged my signature. I whispered, staring at the document. It gets worse. We found text messages between her, and an associate discussing the best way to make your death look accidental. She wasn't planning to just take your money, Mr. Blake. She was planning to kill you. I sat back in the chair, struggling to process what I was hearing. The woman I'd shared a bed with for 3 years had been planning my murder. Where is she now? I asked. We don't know. She missed a scheduled meeting with her accomplice yesterday. Her phone's been turned off, and she hasn't used any of her credit cards. We think she may have realized we were closing in. Detective Chin studied my face. Mr. Blake, I have to ask, do you have any idea where she might have gone? I thought about the locked house, the empty bank accounts, the file I'd left on the kitchen table. Vanessa had probably tried to come home last night and found herself locked out of her own con game. No, I said finally. I have no idea where she is. It wasn't entirely a lie. I didn't know where she was. But I knew she was running, and I knew she wouldn't be coming back. For the first time in days, I smiled. Detective Chun, there's something you should know. I found some things in my house that might help your investigation. I told her about the lockbox, the fake passports, the hidden bank accounts. Her eyes widened as I described each piece of evidence. Mr. Blake, you may have just helped us build a federal case. This woman's been operating across state lines for years. As I walked out of the police station, I felt lighter than I had in months. Vanessa wasn't just gone. She was finished. Her face would be on wanted posters, her fake identities burned, her accounts frozen. She tried to destroy me, but instead, she destroyed herself. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in my workshop when Mike Rodriguez called with an update. Owen, thought you want to know. They caught her. I set down the lock I was repairing. Where? Airport in Mexico City, trying to board a flight to Venezuela under another fake passport. Turns out she had escape routes planned all over South America. What happens now? Federal charges, insurance fraud, mail fraud, bigamy, conspiracy to commit murder. She's looking at 20 to life, no chance of parole. I should have felt satisfied, vindicated something. Instead, I just felt tired. There's more, Mike continued. Remember James Peterson, the guy from Miami? He wants to talk to you. 3 days later, James Peterson called. His voice sounded exactly like I felt. Hollow, used up, wrung out. Owen, this is going to sound weird, but I think we need to meet. Why? Because we're brothers now, in the worst possible way. And I think there are things we need to know about each other. We met at a diner halfway between Cleveland and Miami. James was about my age, with the same shell-shocked expression I'd been wearing for weeks. We sat across from each other like survivors of the same disaster. She told me you were dead, he said without preamble. Car accident, very tragic. She was still grieving. She told me she'd never been married before. James laughed bitterly. She's good, I'll give her that. Made me feel like the luckiest man alive for exactly 18 months. We compared stories, filling in gaps in each other's timelines. The pattern was always the same. Sweeping like a dream woman, marry quickly, slowly isolate the victim from friends and family, then disappear with everything of value. The insurance policy on me was for $300,000, James said. Guess inflation affected murder prices too. Did she ever? I couldn't finish the question. Try to kill me? Yeah. House fire that I barely escaped. Investigators said it was arson, but they couldn't prove it. That's when I started getting suspicious. We sat in silence for a while, two men who'd loved the same lie. You know what the crazy part is? James said finally. Part of me still misses her. Even knowing what she is, what she did, there's still part of me that remembers how good it felt to be loved by her. I nodded. I understood exactly what he meant. But that wasn't love, I said. That was bait. Yeah, James agreed. That was bait. We shook hands in the parking lot, two strangers bound together by shared trauma. As I drove home, I thought about the future for the first time in months. The house was mine now, free and clear. The insurance investigation had cleared me of any wrongdoing. Vanessa's other victims were pursuing civil suits, but her assets had been seized by the government. I had my life back. Not the life I'd planned, but a life that was actually mine. That night, I changed all my passwords, updated my will, and deleted every photo of Vanessa from my phone. Then I sat in my workshop and started planning my next repair job, fixing myself. It was going to take time, but I had nothing but time now. And for the first time in 3 years, that felt like enough. 6 months after Vanessa's arrest, I made a decision that surprised everyone who knew me. I sold the house, liquidated my business, and disappeared. Not literally, like Vanessa had tried to do. But Owen Blake, the emergency locksmith from Cleveland who'd been played for a fool, ceased to exist in any meaningful way. I've been planning it since that conversation with James Peterson. We'd stayed in touch, two survivors helping each other heal. He'd done something similar after his ordeal, moved to Colorado, changed careers, started fresh. You can't run from what happened, he told me during one of our calls. But you can choose who you become after it. The insurance money from Vanessa's various schemes had been recovered and distributed among her victims. My share was enough to start over anywhere I wanted. But money wasn't the real prize. The real prize was freedom. I bought a cabin in the mountains of Montana under a new name. Nothing illegal. I'd legally changed my identity, obtained new documents, created a fresh history. Owen Blake had too much baggage, too many memories, too many connections to a life I wanted to forget. Now I was Marcus Thompson, and Marcus had never been married to a con artist. Marcus had never been targeted for murder. Marcus was building custom furniture in a workshop behind his cabin, creating beautiful things instead of just fixing broken ones. The work was therapeutic, taking raw wood and shaping it into something useful, something permanent. Unlike relationships, furniture didn't lie to you. Unlike people, which showed you exactly what it was. I'd been Marcus for 3 months when I got a call from Detective Chun. Mr. Blake, sorry, Mr. Thompson. Thought you want to know. Vanessa pleaded guilty to all charges. 25 to life, no possibility of parole. I was standing on my porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. How many victims total? 17 that we could prove. Probably more we'll never know about. The judge called it one of the most extensive marriage fraud cases in federal history. After I hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness and tried to feel something. Relief, satisfaction, closure. But there was only quiet. Vanessa was gone, probably forever. The other victims had their justice. I had my new life. It should have felt like victory, but it just felt like the end of a very long, very strange dream. The next morning, I went back to work in my shop. There was a dining table half finished, commissioned by a family in Billings. They'd pay me half up front, trusted me to deliver quality work on time. Simple, honest transactions. No hidden agendas. No false promises. For the first time in years, I knew exactly who I was and what I was worth. 2 years later, Marcus Thompson was doing just fine. The custom furniture business had grown beyond my expectations. Word spread through Montana about the craftsmen who built pieces that lasted generations. I had a 6-month waiting list and clients who drove hours to see my work. But the real success was simpler than that. I slept through the night. I didn't jump when the phone rang. I didn't analyze every conversation for hidden meanings. I'd learned to trust again, starting with myself. The breakthrough came when Sarah Martinez walked into my shop on a Tuesday morning in October. She was looking for a rocking chair for her new granddaughter, something that would become a family heirloom. "I heard you're the best," she said, running her hands along a finished cedar chest. "I try to be." We talked for an hour about wood grains and joinery techniques. She asked intelligent questions, listened to my answers, treated the process with respect. When she left, I found myself looking forward to her next visit. Sarah returned every few weeks to check on the rocking chair's progress. Sometimes she brought coffee. Sometimes we just talked about life in small-town Montana. She was a retired teacher, widowed for 5 years, with grown children and a garden that produced more vegetables than one person could eat. "I'm not looking for romance," she told me one afternoon. "I'm looking for friendship. Someone to share things with." "That sounds perfect," I replied. And it was. We had dinner occasionally, went to movies, attended community events together. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. Just two people who'd both learned the value of taking things slow. One evening, as we sat on my porch watching deer graze in the meadow below, Sarah asked the question I'd been dreading. "Marcus, can I ask you something personal?" My stomach tightened. "Sure. Why did you really move here? A man with your skills could work anywhere. Why choose the middle of nowhere?" I prepared for this moment, rehearsed various versions of the truth. But sitting there with Sarah, watching the peaceful scene before us, I realized I didn't want to lie anymore. "I was married before," I said. "It ended badly. I needed to start over." She nodded. "I understand. Sometimes the only way to heal is to become someone new. Doesn't that bother you?" that I'm not exactly who I appear to be. Sarah smiled. Marcus, none of us are exactly who we appear to be. We're all just doing our best with what we've learned. She was right. The man I'd become wasn't a lie or an escape. He was who I'd always been underneath the damage, underneath the betrayal, underneath the fear. Vanessa had tried to destroy Owen Blake, and in a way, she'd succeeded. But she'd also freed Marcus Thompson to exist. As the stars came out over the Montana sky, I realized something that would have seemed impossible 3 years ago. I was grateful, not for what Vanessa had done, but for what I'd done in response. I'd chosen to rebuild rather than remain broken. I'd chosen growth over bitterness. She'd said we'd talk when she got back from her trip, but by the time she returned, there was nothing left of the man she'd tried to control. I made sure of that.